Tea time. Welcome everybody, Souldin and the Grin brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea. Okay, so I don't actually have a tea with me. So in that case, I'd say let's call this E3 time. More specifically, E3 2018 time. Because in these videos that have this intro, I shall be covering my thoughts on E3 2018. More specifically, again, I'm using that a lot, the conferences of E3 2018. For part 1, I shall be covering the conferences of EA, Bethesda, Square Enix, and Ubisoft. Whereas in part 2, I shall of course be covering the console makers of Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo's conferences. I hope the presentations will be entertaining, and I'll just be sharing small snippets of my thoughts of the games they showed off in the overall presentation, what I was hoping for, and what they ended up showing. Some of them will be easy to compress, some of them won't be, but in any case, I hope you'll enjoy hearing me share my thoughts, and I'd love to hear your own thoughts. Please do enjoy! Now let's get on with the video. I have always been a bit of an odd one out when it comes to thoughts regarding E3s for quite a while. Since E3 2014 to 2017, I have always felt that Microsoft have had actually pretty good E3 conferences. Often I'd say they were better than Sony's conferences, even the big Sony conference where Sony basically announced what everyone's hopes and dreams were becoming reality. My criticism for that was that Sony's hopes and dreams still have yet to even materialise, and they were, basically announcing stuff so far flung in the future. Microsoft's conferences always had something that excited me, be it something old stuff, getting more information, as well as new announcements. Heck, E3 2014 for Microsoft was when they actually convinced me to get an Xbox One with Sunset Overdrive, Ori and the Blind Forest, and Fable Legends. Please don't talk about that last one. Likewise, there were always games that ended up getting me excited, such as Recore, Scalebound. Please don't talk about that one either. I'm still bitter about that. And even the games that weren't for me, there was always something that, sparked some interest in them and thought, oh, this actually looks pretty cool. Gears of War 4 before, the banter of it was pretty incredible. So I've always felt that Microsoft have actually had a good run with their E3 conferences. Announcement of backwards compatibility, that got me really hyped and all that. Even though I've yet to use it, I hope to one day, sort of thing. The fact that it's there and it was a cool thing to announce. But honestly, this is the first of the Microsoft conferences since I started properly watching the conferences in 2014 that has really disappointed me. It's like average or maybe even below average. There is a good points to it. I feel they've set the groundwork well for the future of Microsoft. For instance, they started investing into new studios and creating new first-party studios. They're really starting to understand that the big problem with the Xbox One's market is a lack of exclusives. But pretty much all the games they showed off today were 2019 or beyond, or just the ideas they're working on new projects. Most of the games that they've got going for them at the moment was DLC for stuff like Cuphead and Sea of Thieves, or it was stuff like, although I'm quite happy for it, Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition. Whereas the big sort of teasers like Halo 6, Halo Infinite for instance, it was just a teaser. You barely got a glimpse of anything really, and it seems to be really far flung off. And, that's really disappointing. I have a bit more confidence in their next E3, but at the same time it meant that this E3 was a really weak one in my opinion. Microsoft, I was hoping would hit strong, and they sadly haven't. Mainly because of the only rumour I'd heard about Microsoft's E3, which was basically my main key hope was of a Fable 4, and that didn't happen. Apparently, no, the Forza Horizon team are not working on Fable 4, but they are releasing a new Forza Horizon game. It looks cool, but certainly not my cup of tea. A lot of these games are either open world or very heavy on the shooting, and, I'm a terrible aim, and I hate open world games, so, not exactly a good combination for me. There were, of course, some games within this conference that did appeal to me. Ori and the Will of the Wisps had further information revealed. It's a 2019 game. And gosh darn, that game, of course, always looks gorgeous, really touches the heartstrings. Not as touching as the other trailers, but gosh, it's Ori is a beautiful series at this point. from the looks of it, there's a lot more you can do with combat. Ori's got like a little energy sword sort of thing. Combat looks a lot more fluid. And the little owl bird sort of ally you've got with you allows for some pretty cool scenes with the flying and such, which I'm looking forward to how that applies to the platforming. As mentioned before, Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition. That's cool, I never tried it, and it was an Xbox 360 exclusive originally, so it's pretty cool the Xbox One announced that sort of information. I kind of hope that Dead or Alive 6 would also have a bit more info revealed within Xbox One's conference, but sadly not. I thought it would have been appropriate, but hey-ho. Speaking of exclusives, Battletoads is finally coming back. Battletoads, new Battletoads game. But much like with the Halo 6 thing, it was just a tease. They didn't really reveal anything about it. Likewise, another game that's got me somewhat interested, Jump Force. Bandai Namco are making a new sort of Shonen Jump crossover game. Where apparently the big reveal is, hey, Death Note characters are going to be in it. Okay, fair enough. But it's just a small trailer thing that we don't have any proper details on. Could be a fighting game, could be, a adventure game. It's probably just a broad, 3D fighting game as per usual. Hopefully it goes a little bit better than the last attempt at doing that. I didn't hear very many good things about the last Jump crossover game they made. We Happy Few still looks really cool. And I say cool as in it looks horrifying, but it's got such a good sort of concept to it. Probably not my sort of game, but I appreciate the style to it and all. And hey, the developers of it are now owned by Microsoft. Microsoft really invested in developers and have brought out 5 companies. And so they're really investing in new talent and really pushing for more first-party games in the future. Other than that, Nier Automata, it's got a high-definition version of Xbox One X. Also, it's coming to Xbox One. And the only other game I feel worth mentioning for me was Sekiro. A game which has a cool Japanese style to it, but it's a From Software title, and interestingly published by Activision, and I just don't feel that From Software's gameplay is going to be that appealing to me, but I'm going to keep an eye out for it regardless, just see about what new information gets revealed to it. I guess the only other things I'll quickly mention, there was Devil May Cry 5, kind of unsure about that because it looks like it's based more off DMC, and I've never played any of those games anyway, but hey, that's a thing. There's a top-down Legend of Zelda styled game, like really heavily Legend of Zelda styled game called Tunic. And there was a bunch of Gears of War announcements. The Gears pop. Oh, you could hear the crowd go silent with that. Oh gosh, they were right to announce Gears 5, but wasn't nearly as exciting as Gears 4. They're trying to take it too seriously. The banter of Gears 4 trailer just made it so much better. But yeah. So really, kind of a disappointing one. Ori and the Will of the Wisp was the only game that had me woo sort of thing. But hey, maybe the other companies will do a better job, and I'm hoping with the investments they are to all these new students and talent that Microsoft will get a much better E3 next year and truly come out punching and fighting and all that like it per usual. Let me just be clear here. I think I watched all of Sony's E3 2018 conference. It's a little bit awkward because Sony are experimenting, changing things up a bit, which is nice to see. And the E3 conference, they seem to be doing a similar thing to how Nintendo announces games in the Treehouse after their presentation, and Sony seem to be doing a similar thing in that they have a sort of like talk show sort of discussion thing after the conference, and they've already mentioned they're going to be announcing some new games during that. However, these E3 times, Part 1 and Part 2 at least, are just covering the conferences. I'm not covering anything outside of the conferences. It's just what these conferences are announcing. That said, I may make a Part 3 a little while after E3 once all the dust is settled to cover some of the games which I may have missed and just, analyse it in all when all the information is there. But this is in Part 2 also covered the conferences itself and the way they present things. And I must admit, it's very weird with Sony's one. Like, usually it's a fault with a lot of the companies such as EA and such when they end up doing too much of a discussion thing and not enough about the games themselves, or showing enough of the games themselves. Yeah, oddly enough, I feel that if you're not going to at least do some discussion sort of points, is in terms of getting onto stage and having a bit more of a stage presence, it kind of makes no sense why you bother having a stage and instead not just do a little sizzle reel or something instead. And on that note, Sony had a very strange way of utilising a stage present for this E3, because instead of standing up and sort of discussing about aspects of the games we'd want to know about, instead they just kept bringing on musicians. It's like they had some talk and stage presence, but it wasn't actually anything that really contributed anything towards the games, I feel. It wasn't anything that really helped present these games and help sell me on these games. At the end of the day, there's really only 3 games that had any form of interest to me in this Sony's presentation. Not surprising, but at the same time I was kind of expecting, given Microsoft was a little bit more disappointing for me this year, I was kind of expecting Sony to do a surprise for me and make up for it, but no, Sony's didn't make up for it at all, really, honestly. It was typically, I'm not a big fan of Sony's presentations these last couple years, and I really wasn't a particular fan of this one. For all their talk of their big 4, they didn't focus too much on it, or maybe, I mean, they showed off their big 4 games: The Last of Us 2, Spider-Man, Death Stranding, and Ghosts of Tsushima, or is it Tsuhima? I'm not sure. They showed off a fair amount of it. They got the prime screen time, but there wasn't any sort of discussion of what the game was about. There's a lot of mystery still left to these games, and I kind of feel that it needed to have more talked about them. Well, one of them probably doesn't need much talked about at all, and that is, of course, Spider-Man, because it looks and plays like a Spider-Man game, like the good old PS2 Spider-Man game, but enhanced in certain ways, particularly graphically, and filled to the brim with villains. Like, you basically have to fight a Sinister Six fight, minus a member. Minus Doc Ock, really. And, gosh, it looks great. It looks fantastic. I'm actually really excited for the Spider-Man game. I'm not going to be purchasing it because luckily I have an older brother and a nephew who love Spider-Man. So I'll just be popping around their house to play it on their PS4. So, hey, I don't have to worry about purchasing the game myself. I can just get it as a birthday or Christmas present at this rate. But Spider-Man was the big thing. I was already expecting to look interested in that. And really, there's no other game that was sort of something I want, but there are games that's like, oh, hey, that looks cool. That looks cool. That looks neat. For instance, Ghost of Tsushima. From what I hear, it's an open world game, which is the big drawback to me. But in terms of everything else I saw, or in terms of its lovely samurai saying, its style, its combat, its little storytelling presentation and such, I'm intrigued. I'm interested. It's just that that one mention that it's an open world game really kind of makes me hesitate on it. But otherwise, Ghost of Tsushima was really well presented, and I'm quite interested in that. But more of a that's why I kind of wanted more of the discussion point, because that was a game that it's a new IP, and I feel I really need to know more if to ever really start committing myself. It needs to be expanded upon. A game that doesn't need that much expansion upon because it's a remake, but was certainly an exciting moment, I feel, even though I'm not a fan of this, sort of invested in the series at all. Resident Evil 2, they revealed that really well, and it's really interesting seeing the classic Resident Evil going with a over-the-shoulder third-person style. Seems like that's what Leon Kennedy brings to the series nowadays from Resident Evil 4, and it's particularly interesting after Resident Evil 7 was so different in style, going with a first person, more slope, sort of a more horror feel to it with less action. And it's interesting the Resident Evil 2 remake is more of a Resident Evil 4 style Resident Evil, and it's kind of interesting how that all works. Anything else worth of note? Again, nothing else really excited me per se. I got really hyped up for the Koei Tecmo symbol logo popping up, hoping that they'd show off more of Dead or Alive 6. But no, it was just the announcement of Neo 2. Still, it's nice that Team Ninja are actually making other games, because they got into a point where they were just making Dead or Alive, and they need to, spread out their wings a few times every now and again. Let's see, anything else? Well, Death Stranding got shown off, as mentioned, and I'm starting to understand what Death Stranding's gameplay is about. In fact, I kind of like the concept of it. You do deliveries. You go traversing across this vast landscape doing these deliveries. I'm a little disappointed that the landscapes, whilst pretty, are very bare. Like, there are ways games can make that work, but it didn't seem very interesting actually travelling. But then, who knows, that could be filled with creatures, because the main monsters of this game, the terrifying creatures, are invisible. And, oh gosh, they sold that real quick. This trailer finally starts explaining stuff. Not sit down explaining things, but you can actually interpret things and start to make some sense of it. Even the whole baby thing starts to make somewhat of a sense. as much as you can make sense out of Hideo Kojima. And other than that, there was some games they apparently were showing in the lead up to E3. No, nothing else really. Nothing really of note for me. I had some hopes going into this E3, and somehow Sony didn't succeed at a single one. There's a Medieval remake / remaster coming out, but they didn't talk about that. Once again, Sony seems to shy away from anime-style games. And, oh gosh, PlayStation All-Stars and PS Vita acknowledgements. Oh gosh, that was never going to happen. Hey, there's a reason they're called hopes. But yeah, real lackluster from Sony, but I'm used to that. But I'm surprised in that it was lackluster in a way where it's been seen as lackluster from other people's point of views. Usually Sony has these big announcements, but they're so far flung off, it kind of is like, why bother announcing it then? This year they actually focused on games they had, but they didn't really announce anything new. Like one or two small things, but yeah, real strange that. But that was Sony's conference. Haven't had much luck with Microsoft and Sony so far, so next up is Nintendo's. Let's hope they bring the goods. Hey there, do you like Smash Bros? No? Well, tough, because you're not getting anything else out of this Direct. Oh gosh, this was I have mixed feelings about this Nintendo's E3 presentation. Not that there wasn't stuff that I thought was cool in it, I will admit, even though I'm not as big a fan of it anymore. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, as we now know it as, does look pretty cool in a lot of regards. However, I wouldn't want to encourage this kind of sort of E3 presentation where they focus on one game for a good 20 to 25 minutes of their 45-minute presentation. That was like half or over half of their presentation focused on just one game. We were informed that it was going to be the highlight, but over half your presentation, that is just ridiculous. It's like, that's ultimately the problem with Nintendo's E3 presentation this year. There wasn't really much time spent with any game that wasn't Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I might as well talk about that, get that out of the way first. As I said, I've got mixed feelings about this presentation, and I have mixed feelings about the upcoming Super Smash Bros. They've done a lot of sort of small cool things. They showed they're having all the characters returning, which does alleviate some of my problems with the roster issue in terms of, oh, this is the direction you're going with. Every character is back. Nice to see Ice Climbers return again. And they've done a lot of little cool things. A few small character changes. Ganondorf has a overhead sword swing, so he may use his sword in a few more of his moves. You got stuff like the female Pokemon trainer. Well, Pokemon trainer is back for starters. And female Pokemon trainer is now an alternative costume. That's really cool to see. A lot of the Final Smashes have been changed, though kind of in a boring way. And yeah, they've done some nifty things. In particular, Ridley is playable. That is awesome. I did make a video saying that 6 characters would get Smash Bros to grab my attention, and Ridley was certainly one of them. They showcased Inkling a lot. Showcased cool few things with Inklings. I really like the thing that Killer Whale's the Final Smash for the Inklings. They introduced an Echo character concept because I guess clone characters was such a negative connotation. Which they introduced Daisy as the new Echo character. Come on, let's be honest, they're just clones. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but Big Blue's back as a stage. So yeah, that's really cool. Few techniques, stuff like that. But the problem is that my problems with Super Smash Bros. For Wii U extended far beyond in terms of the character roster, but also to do with content and the feel of the game. My problems were that there wasn't much to do in a single player aspect, and so something that's hard to promote for a trailer. I felt the stages and items were overpowered for the very first time, and there was I can't really feel for the latter, and there was no new single player content announced in it. Lots of stages, lots of characters. It's kind of like a combination of all the Super Smash Bros. Stuff before it in terms of all the multiplayer features and characters and such, but unsure how to feel because there's definitely a gap for where single player stuff and should be revealed and stuff like that. So I'm left with mixed feelings about the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is problematic because, as noted, it was the main highlight of their entire presentation. And as such, there wasn't really much room for anything else to get proper details on or really appeal to me. And honestly, there was only a couple things that really grabbed me, and it's a case of, for the most part, that I was already interested in them to begin with. Octopath Traveler got a small showcasing, that was nice. It's getting a new demo, but it's like, I already know I want Octopath Traveler. They didn't really need to spend too much time with it, but it's nice to see that they're promoting it even in this late of a stage. Hollow Knight is a game that I was originally quite interested in, and then it just kind of disappeared and I didn't see it, and suddenly it's back up and it's actually out today. I'm actually tempting to make that one of my 12 games of this year. The problem is, I've got the game Sushi Striker recently, and I want to actually spend some more time with that before moving on to anything else. It's problematic like that. It's really hard to juggle all the games. Aside from that, they announced a bunch of little indie games, Overcooked 2, Killer Queen Black, and it is Sizzle Rule showing off a few more new games. Ninjala looks pretty cool. They only had a small snippet of Starlink. Dragon Ball Fighters is coming to Nintendo Switch. I was happy to see SNK Heroine, so I planned to get that game, and they should add that within the Sizzle Reel. But they didn't really talk about any of them, and I feel they really should have maybe cut back on the immense amount of time of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, where for the most part they were only commenting about small subtle changes that I think would have been more interesting to get the game and see for yourself, or get talked about within a later Smash Bros. Direct. I mean, it's not like there isn't time. The game doesn't come out, Super Smash Bros. Doesn't come out to December. But back to the other games, again, there's not really much to talk about other than Super Smash Bros. They announced Super Mario Party. It's got Goomba and Bowser playable. That's really the only thing they took away from that. It's really hard to tell because the last few Mario Party games haven't really resonated with people, so it felt like the sort of game that really needed a moment to discuss things, and they didn't. Likewise, Fire Emblem Three Houses looks cool. It's coming out spring 2019. That's the stuff we know about. Really could have done with, sitting down, what's the plot, who are the characters, who's the lead character, is it a create your own character sort of thing again. They really should have done with explaining things. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is getting a story DLC. That didn't need much explanation to get that part. That's fairly cool. And there was this thing started off with a mecha game, cel-shaded mecha game called Daemon Times Machina, I believe. And again, that's something that really could have done with some more details fleshed out on. It looks cool. It's a good way to start the opening. But seeing it, I couldn't help but think, hey, Nintendo, don't you already have a robot arena-based series? Yes, you do. It's called Custom Robo. Why isn't this Custom Robo? That's kind of the problem with Nintendo. They've got so many IPs that when they try to break out into new ideas, it kind of feels like, well, why didn't you use this IP that you already own and haven't been using in a while? But yeah, like, I even look at my list and I think of what else I can bring up, and it's like, it's pretty much all Smash Bros. Like, there was almost nothing else in this Direct other than Smash Brothers. My big highlights, though, were, of course, Octopath Traveler continuing to be mentioned, and Hollow Knight. Again, really have to consider, should I get that game? And, of course, SNK Heroines, but that's a game I'm already interested in getting. That would have been nice to have a bit of focus on, but yeah, that was the Nintendo Direct. I feel they're definitely going to reveal more stuff through the Treehouse, so I definitely feel I'm going to have to make a third tea time to cover just all this game info that slipped through the cracks or wasn't in the presentations. But yeah, mixed feelings on that. I wouldn't recommend focusing on just one game for that long, but it's generated a bit of hype, and hey, Ridley's playable. That's pretty darn cool still. So yeah, that was the Nintendo Direct. And with that, E3 2018 time part 2 has come to an end. As per usual, I would love to hear your opinions. Feel free to share your thoughts on both what I've commented here, my personal highlights and thoughts on the E3 2018 conferences that I've covered, as well as sharing your own thoughts of the games announced at E3 2018. I'd love to hear them, and comments and all that. I'd love to discuss these sort of things with you. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed these videos, and cheerio!